watching the stuff this week when he's like, yeah, bring the family. It's like, yeah, like, there's only so many hours a day, especially on fight week when the training's done. I'm only going to, I don't even want to say train. I'm only going to go shake out and walk through the game plan and hit pads for how long? 45 minutes? Like, what are you going to do the rest of the week? You can only sightsee in Vegas so much, So, I think it's great that he has his family with him. I think that's awesome, If I had the financial means to do that and get an Airbnb and stuff, I'd probably do the same on fight weeks, If we could have the baby in a separate room so that I'm not waking up every 5 seconds, why the heck not,
So it's funny you mentioned that because I did not realize until I was talking to another fighter that I think the UFC only will fly out like one or two of your team members or, coaches, and that's about it. And everything else is either on them or on you. So it's funny you mentioned that because when your family does come with you, I mean, UFC's not paying for that really, right? You're fronting the bill for that? Like you guys are kind of going on a mini vacation for a week or a weekend, but that's on you guys.
Absolutely, and that's the thing is, you get you in one corner, So that's why, and even some stuff people don't think about that always registers through my mind. That's why I love the Apex fights actually, because you're fighting in Vegas, so A, the travel's kind of cheap, but B, the taxes, because you do have to pay taxes where you fight. If you fight overseas, you got to pay taxes coming back to the States and stuff, like as high as like 30% and stuff from some countries. So, while it sounds great to go fight in London or this place or that place, it's not great when you're losing a lot of your money. So, or trying to bring other corners and stuff. So yeah, you get you in one corner and you get one room. So, what was great about COVID, that sounds such a weird thing to say. Well, what was great about the COVID era, the lockdown, was, they got the entire hotel for the fighters. So it was a residence inn, and people heard that and go, oh, you're not in some casino? That sucks. You're like, no. This was Fight Hotel. This is amazing because you got apartment style of rooms because the whole place was either 1 or 2 bedroom rooms with a living room and a small kitchenette, a burner to cook on, a stove, a fridge, the freezer, the whole nine. So you had that. You got 3 rooms. You got one room for you and another guy, 1 room for the other 2 corners, and a 3rd room to work out in. You're like, dude, we don't have to share a workout room, listen to somebody else's terrible music, whatever, where everyone's all in one, one guy wants a thermostat real high, one guy wants it low, you're all arguing, and you all get your own bedroom, you don't have to share beds or this and that. It was awesome, and then, obviously when quarantine was no longer a thing, now we're back in casinos, so like even for the last Apex fight, we were at Palace Station Casino, you're like, oh, you gotta go down and ask for a fridge and tell him that your cornerman has diabetes so you can get, for his insulin, you gotta find hacks to try to get a fridge for because I'm not going to eat out all week. You want to make your own food. I need a fridge. I bought a little hot skillet to cook on. So it's back to the road days, So, yeah, I didn't mind that stuff at all. But yeah, you get 1 room and 1 corner gets flown out, which is weird because not to sound ungrateful because I heard Darush on the podcast the other day actually too. He's like, yeah, there's so many ways we get treated above and beyond what we deserve. You get a limo picking you up and you get, all your meals if you want it on fight week and this and that. But at the same time, he's like, dude, isn't it like a revolving door of replenishing airline miles? Like, it should be no thing for them to get free flights because, the amount of flights they book, they're getting loyalty points. And they always do the same airlines. It should almost be free, I feel like. Or if not, it's just a tax write-off. So, very confusing, but, it is what it is. It's also a tax write-off for us, so it is what it is.
It is funny you say that because you guys are kind of getting shorted on gaining those miles. And then, like you said, wouldn't they just have a giant corporate account to where some of these are just free for them anyway? So,
and they have the capability because
exactly.
I've been in a jam where, a flight gets canceled or delayed or this and that. They're like, oh, we'll just get you a new one. You're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, then wait a minute. Why am my quarters not being blown out? But it is what it is. They're always changing. They're evolving. Hopefully with the merger with, the WWE and all that, there's more money coming in. Hopefully they'll just keep making those little changes. And, for the next generation, it'll be even better. I hope I'm around for it.
Yeah, the merging with the whole Endeavor and WWE thing, it's going to be a very interesting situation because, I've been a pro wrestling fan since I was 3 years old, and this is absolutely uncharted territory and is mind-blowing that Vince would even allow this to happen. But the fact that he did and it is going to happen, obviously it's not set in stone to where, nothing's finalized. They're still working through it. A lot of people don't realize how long corporate mergers genuinely do take. And from what I remember from when Endeavor bought UFC, there was a lot of people, let go, and a lot of like extra money just kind of, cleared. And I imagine from what I've heard, they're going to have to cut like over $100 million from WWE. And I'm like, I don't know what their books look like, but it's going to be a very interesting situation whenever that does happen. And then afterwards, how much more are we going to have crossovers? Because, obviously Conor McGregor would do amazing in WWE. I've heard Amanda Nunes would also like to maybe do something after she's done. And we've seen the success of Ronda Rousey. Obviously, Brock Lesnar went back and forth. Cain Velasquez kind of went over and did some stuff in WWE. Did a lot more and better things down in Mexico, obviously. But, we're going to have a lot more people do the crossover and kind of jump back and forth, whether they're actually going to compete in the ring or not, the whole other situation. But you have the same company. You're going to have the same, people running things, probably the same HR team, because which I do not envy them for any second at all. That is it's a whole lot of personalities to deal with that I wouldn't want any part of.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine all the headache of having to deal with that, And there's definitely some interesting crossover possibilities and stuff. That they can make happen. I think it's just a lot of fighters are getting ahead of themselves, being like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome. I want to cross over." It's like, well, listen, it's even harder than fighting because, like, in the UFC, they can make you a star if they want you to be a star, but you have to do your job. But you can become a star despite not getting the push. But in pro wrestling, you're not going to do that because they also control the outcomes, right? So, like, Ronda's done really well over there, but because they also made it that way, So it's like a Beneil Dariush, or maybe a Jim Miller, they're never going to succeed because they don't have that. So it is interesting, but it's just going to kind of elevate the characters we already have. I feel like the Colbys and the Connors and the which is great. It's great eyes for the sport. If it brings more money for the company, now it's all one big company. So the more money they can make, the better, right? So all in all, it's still good.
Obviously, what I would love is for the money to trickle down where it needs to. Obviously, we've kind of touched on the fighter pay, and we could go probably for a long time about how fighters need to be paid better. But I genuinely do hope eventually that money trickles down to where it needs to and doesn't just stay on the top like it has been.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject, right? But it's one of those things where, for me, I always say this every time somebody brings it up. I'm a security guy. I want a little, I just want peace of mind, right? So for me, if I'm the pay, I know what the pay was when I signed the contract, and if I don't like it, I should have said no, right? Because what we see a lot of times is guys sign this 7-fight, usually they're a little shorter for us, but like someone like Masvidal maybe, they sign them after a good win when they're not an icon, and they sign a 6-fight deal, a 7-fight deal, because they weren't that big of a name, and then 2 fights later they're a huge name. I'm like, hey man, I want more money. Like, well, you did give your word and your signature. You kind of hedged your bets, right? So like, if you believed in yourself, you would have said no and taken a 1-fight deal. So it's whatever. It's neither here nor there. The big thing for me is I think we should get rid of that clause. I don't know what the clause says, but in layman's terms, you can be cut at any given time. You know what I mean? So like that and the show win. If we can get rid of show win, get a steady pay, and get rid of the clause that says you can be cut at any time, it would just make normal life easier. Going to buy a house, going to buy a car, whatever it is, normal things. Because like I bought a house last year, it was a nightmare as an independent contractor with a contract that has a clause of you're owed fights, but you also aren't actually owed them because we can cut you at any time. They're like, so you don't have a job. Like, I swear I have a job. It's very hard to prove income and stuff when, at least if you said, okay, you're going to get paid instead of 10, you're going to get 15 4 times in the next 2 years. They go, oh, okay. You make a guaranteed $30,000 a year for 2 years. You can have this house or you can't have this house, right? Like, it's just stuff like that. So in my mind, I think like that, a little more practical. I'm not going to complain about the pay. If I wanted more pay, I knew what the starting contract was when I got in. If that's the case, I should have went to school and become a doctor or something. So I do understand the argument for it, but I'm never going to be on TV, an interview complaining about that just because I signed my name, and it's better than what I could have been doing, so I can't complain.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right about, don't sign a 6-fight contract if you truly believe in yourself, because like you said, 2 fights in, you could be a megastar, and then all of a sudden you kind of do have them, by the brass and say, hey, maybe pay me more for the next, 2, 3 fights, whatever it is. So
they did that with that Team Takedown years ago. From what I've heard in interviews and stuff from like Askren and these guys, I don't know if you remember them. They only took a couple fighters. They were good collegiate wrestlers. They took like Shane Roll, a couple guys, and Johnny Hendricks was one of them. And they paid you up front. I think it was like $700,000. But then they got 50% or something of all your future earnings. And they offered it to Ben Askren. He said in an interview, and he was like, did you take it? He's like, heck no. Like, why? He's like, because I believe that my career was worth way more than $700,000, And when you hear the horror story of Johnny Hendricks, it sounds like he's kind of broke, So yeah, it's kind of, you can hedge your bets or you can bet on yourself. And if you really thought you were going to have that star power, it takes guts and being a little ballsy, but you shouldn't have signed the contract, right? So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, Johnny Hendricks still lives around here, and we worked out at the same gym for a while, and somebody thought I was him, and I was like, that's either really bad for him or very good for me. I don't know which one was which.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as the fight world is a physical one, it's also a very mental game as well. What kind of mental workouts do you kind of practice or kind of keep in your arsenal?
I don't have any structured visualization or anything like that. What I used to do a lot that I guess counts as visualization was, when I was like coming up the regional scene and stuff, was just daydream, right? I put music on in the car. I was always driving, always trained in places. And at that point you go, oh wow, yeah, I walked to the UFC cage 1,000 times before I ever got there, But, nothing structured. The big thing for me, well, first and foremost is my faith, right? So,
right.
I have that understanding in my mind, in my faith. I do believe I have to turn over every stone. And at the end of the day, what God's plan is God's plan, and I'm not going to change that, But I can't sit back and, eat Twinkies and not train and go, oh, I don't know why I didn't make weight. It must have been God's plan, But if I'm working as hard as I can with the gifts I've been given, the rest is going to take care of itself, or it's not, and I have to see that that's God's plan for my life. Even the losses, I've seen tremendous benefit in going, oh, wow, I'm not a prophet, but I do think I see what you were trying to do here for me, God, So, that's my faith, and that's the biggest factor in my life and everything, in my family and everything. But, with that in mind, what I've found that helps me is not having expectations, right? When I'm picturing the fight, I'm thinking of, in other sports it might work to say, okay, see yourself hitting the home run and the ball's leaving the tee and I'm putting a hole in one, whatever, But fighting is not that because there's another adversary trying to do the same thing. So, for me, it's really not expecting the worst, but planning to be in the chaos, right? Like worst case scenario, and I'm okay with that. If I go, okay, I'm going to check this guy out in the first round. Well, I've had some fights where I didn't plan it for that to happen, but that was my hope and expectation. And when he didn't tap, I had huge adrenaline dumps, and that was a big learning experience in the realm of fight experience. Because you're like, oh, I choked the first 4 guys I fought out in the first, they don't tap. You're like, holy cow, I have an adrenaline dump. Doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in, getting beat up. So, for me, it's just, I'm there to fight tooth and nail for the allotted time. If it's 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes. If it's 25, it's 25. I'm ready to walk through whatever fire I can until either my job is done, or I've convinced 3 judges I'm better, I've put them away, or, I've been put away. And that's the plan now. And there's a freedom that comes with that I don't think you can get from having a mental coach or this or that. I think, there's definitely some stuff I follow, though. Wrestling Mindset and stuff. They put out some great content as far as, on the day-to-day, going into practice, being intentional, not trying to be a perfectionist, but trying to seek progress. Those are all great principles, but I wouldn't call those, I don't have any mental rituals that I do, not like that.
Nice. That is a perfect mindset to have is, practice for purpose, not just for perfection. So, that's awesome that you're still opening yourself up to allowing, the universe or God to speak to you through other people or through other actions that, you're open to that as opposed to, like you said, people could just be sitting on their couch, not training, eating Twinkies, and like,